What's going on, NBA 2K fans? It's Pete Hull, aka PT Sports 84, back with another video. Today I want to do something a little bit different than I normally do. Normally I'm talking about updated things in NBA 2K. Today I decided to go with a different format. Hope you guys enjoy it. The state of the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, for those that aren't aware, were eliminated in a sweep by the Minnesota Timberwolves. In the last three playoffs, the Suns have been eliminated on their home floor. 2022 Game 7 in the conference finals versus the Mavericks. 2023 Game 6 conference semis versus the Nuggets. And then this year, the sweep by the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's crazy to think that this much talent on the Phoenix Suns, they get eliminated in round one. Last year, they got eliminated. They made sweeping changes. Obviously, Matt Ishbia came in. They moved on from Chris Paul. They changed head coaches. They dealt DeAndre Ayton, who was unhappy. They spent a lot of money. And they're way over the second league tax apron. They brought in this season Bradley Beal to complement Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. Looking at them going forward, they're projected to have a team salary of $206 million. $104 million in the luxury tax. That is the highest in the league. That is crazy. Both of those numbers are high in the league. They did make an in-season move towards the end of the regular season. Grayson Allen signed the 4-year, $70 million contract extension right before the playoffs. That will now cost the Phoenix Suns $79 million in payroll and luxury tax for next season. Man, it is crazy to see how much money that they have going out as far as contracts go. That doesn't even count the contract that they put for Frank Vogel, who is supposedly on the hot seat, according to Adrian Wojnarowski from ESPN. Now, Vogel did come out in the press conference following the sweep by the Timberwolves and say he has the full support by Matt Ishbia, but it's a 5-year, $31 million deal for Frank Vogel. Does Matt Ishbia cut ties with him and go a different direction? If you looked at the way that the offense ran, it wasn't a fluid offense. Could that have been more Bradley Beal than anything else? Maybe. Frank Vogel's not out there turning the ball over constantly. Booker, Durant, and Beal they're prolific scorers, but they're turnover prone as far as they basically look like they met each other the morning before each game in the playoffs, and then they were like, hey, let's just go hoop. Like, that's exactly what it looked like. They had injuries. They had 24 different starting lineups. The big three only played 41 games together. They went 26-15 with Booker, Durant, and Beal in those lineups. They did get a healthy Durant for pretty much majority of the season. So he played 75 games. That's the most he's played in since the Achilles injury in 2019. Durant backed Frank Vogel after Saturday's practice. We'll see what happens. The question I have, so Matt Ishbia took over. James Jones was kind of linked with Monty Williams as the head coach. Obviously, Monty Williams is in Detroit now. Does James Jones get let go and they go a different direction? We do know financially Phoenix is in a bind. $150 million tied up to 3 players. Devin Booker's Supermax contract of 4 years, $224 million, kicks in next season. He's due $49.3 million. Durant will be in the third of a 4-year deal for $194 million. He makes $49.8 next year. And Bradley Beal 5-year, $251 million deal is set to pay him $50.2 million next year. That's $150 million tied up with only 3 players. They have roster limitations. You can't use a pre-existing trade exception, but you can use a trade exception from a new trade. You can't take money in a trade. You can't aggravate contracts in a trade. That means you can't lump them together and say, okay, we got Nasir Little and Nurkic and we get $20 million going out, and you can't send out cash. Booker, Durant, and Beal, that much money tied up, you better win. Bradley Beal has that no trade clause in his contract. So what are you going to do to be able to get winnable players around them? Grayson Allen has the contract extension. Yes, he can be moved after October 16th, but that's basically 1 week out from the NBA regular season starting. Do you want to do that? Yusuf Nurkic averaged 11 and 11 this season. He couldn't finish inside very, very well in the playoffs against Rudy Gobert. Obviously, Gobert's a lot taller, things like that. But Nurkic was a question mark going into the season. Looking at it, I mean, he's in the middle of a 4-year, $70 million deal. He makes $18 million next year. He potentially could be the one moved. Royce O'Neal is a free agent. He essentially in the playoffs became the sixth man. He's unrestricted. They've got to be able to find a way to get him back. It looks like you're staring down the barrel of another veteran minimum bench. I'm sure Damian Lee will be healthy and he'll be back next season. Drew Eubanks, maybe Eric Gordon. They all, Josh Okogie, they all have player options going into the final year. So do they go somewhere else for a better role? I'm looking more at Eric Gordon. I think he could move on and go to a different team. I think Damian Lee, because it is closer to California, obviously he has a wife and children, which many players do, but I think he's more so settled like the Bay Area, Phoenix, like that kind of part of the West Coast. I think he'd be happy coming off the bench. Being that he won't be injured next year, I think he can really help them with shooting coming off the bench. The big question mark I have, what are they going to do at point guard? You can't play Beal and Booker as the point guards. It's just not going to work. So you got to figure out, you're not going to get off of Beal's contract. So realistically, could they make a bold move elsewhere? Obviously, Booker's not going anywhere, but I'm looking more at Kevin Durant. If Durant goes to the front office and says, hey, we got to do something different, I'd like to go somewhere else. Don't think that happens because Durant's already done that and it put a stain on his resume. But that would get you out of a lot of sticky situations. Ideally, you want to move Beal if you could, but nobody's taking that contract for that kind of money. Also, realistically, it's probably going to be just very minor moves. They do have a first-round pick, the 22nd overall pick in the 2024 draft. You can either try to get a point guard that way, use it as a building tool. Maybe you can get somebody late, Carlton Carrington, something like that. Maybe in that range that you could get. I'll be curious to see kind of what route they go, but I would think based on their immediate need of a guard, that they go for a point guard in that range. Just it makes too much sense. They don't really need necessarily a big, ideally, and I don't know if he falls that far, but me being a Duke fan, Jared McCain as a shooter, a combo guard, he, I think, would be great in Phoenix, would fit them really, really well. You got Tyler Kolek out of Marquette. He's a senior, kind of more experienced. So they have some options there in that range that I like for them at the point guard spot. It's just a matter of, are you going to fill that role that way? If Eric Gordon ends up leaving, and they're not looking at Damian Lee to really fill a rotation role per se. You could go younger. You could get a defender potentially to replace a Josh Okogie type role in Ryan Dunn. Ryan Dunn is a phenomenal. I think he's the best perimeter defender in the draft. If you can get him in at 22, that's a huge win for the Phoenix Suns. Yes, he's a rookie, but I think he's that good defensively already. He could hold his own, kind of like an Andre Jackson Jr. type in Milwaukee. I think he's that kind of, type, but we'll see. The other thing against Phoenix going into next season is the West is going to be loaded. You have OKC still good. Minnesota's still good. Denver's going to be good. You're not overtaking them. Then you go to Dallas, the Clippers. If they're healthy, they're looking good. They looked good against Dallas yesterday. The Pelicans, if they make any roster moves, because we've seen that Brandon Ingram and Zion don't work. So if they move somebody like a Brandon Ingram and they get a better roster, they're going to be right there. Don't forget Sacramento. Yes, they didn't make it this year, but I think they're going to retool some of their bench and be even better next year. Memphis, you get John Morant back and a healthy squad. Houston, they were competitive this year with Ime Udoka, the young guys on that team. They could take a leap forward. And don't forget the big man out of San Antonio, Wembanyama. He is going to have players around him. Devin Vassell. You've got other pieces that they can build around in free agency. It is going to be a bloodbath in the Western Conference next year. That goes for a lot of teams like the Lakers that are treading water. Like the only ones we can really count on that are probably not going to be good is Utah and Portland. Other than that, it's going to be really, really hard. Some good teams are going to be missing. And Phoenix, the way this roster is constructed, might be on the outside looking in. So they've got a huge offseason ahead of them. Man, it's going to be tough. But we'll see. I like Durant, Booker. But outside of that, this roster's thin, for the most part. They've got to figure out. Hopefully they can figure something strategic in the front office and make a big splash. I don't see it. So it's going to be minimum guys. Hopefully you get enough guys that play well together. They need shooting. They need wing defenders. And they need a point guard off the bench. Some big man depth wouldn't hurt either. We will see. But that's what's in store looking ahead to the 2024 offseason for the Phoenix Suns. If you've liked this video and this content, please, please, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Still working on some 2K projects. Hopefully we get a 2K patch next week. I'm going to guess it's probably going to have some WNBA stuff in it, maybe some face scans for some of the draft picks for the WNBA. We'll see. If it does, I will go over that content. We're reaching the off season for 2K. That means draft prospects, things like that. So that is what I'm working on right now. Also working on a personal roster to put out along with Tico Istakori for the off season. Hopefully going to have a scenario as well so you guys can just jump right into the off season and make the moves as you see fit. But all that content will be coming soon. Stay tuned to the channel for more. Until then, hope everybody enjoys the rest of your week and take care.